This will be available later online. So if you have to leave early for some reason, you'll be able to watch the rest of the presentation that you missed. That'll be posted to our website, and we'll also send it over to new student programs as well. I want to thank everybody for being here, and just acknowledge that we'll be going over the types of aid today, and you may have noticed that, of course, you received an initial aid offer when you came to Duke, and you might not be able to see that offer online right now, and we are in the process of finalizing aid offers. And so we have temporarily removed those because we've made some changes, and I'm going to talk about what those changes are as we go through the presentation today. But I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Miranda McCall, and I'm the Acting Director of Financial Aid. And I am joined by my colleagues who are in the financial aid office. And so they're here, they're listening to your questions. We will be opening the chat at the end of the presentation to give you a chance to respond. We'll do a live Q&A, and I'll be sure to allot plenty of time for that. And before we get started, I know we're still admitting just a few folks from the wait room. I just wanted to let you know I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for you to come to Duke, and we're excited to support you with financial aid. And I think if there's one message that I want to make sure that we get across today, it's that our office is here to support you. And we'll be talking about how you can get in touch with us. Obviously, things are a little different. Here we are doing new student orientation via Zoom. And that's going to be the case with, I know, so many of your sessions that you're going through. But we are as available as we have ever been. And we'll make sure that you can reach us with any questions that you have. And so let's get started. I'm going to go and start talking about the types of aid. I'm going to share my screen with you so that we have a common area to talk from. Give me just a moment to get that PowerPoint up for you. And here we go. And share. Okay. So understanding your financial aid offer. First, I want to talk about what you will see in your financial aid offer. There are quite a few different types of aid. And in order to see it, I mentioned it's not available right at this moment, but we are working on them, and you should have them, the finalized versions, by next week. You're not going to see significant changes to the amount of aid that's out there from what you saw in your initial offer. Obviously, we're holding true to everything that we would have promised when you committed to Duke, but we're making some changes to hopefully make it better for you. And I'll talk about those as we go. The first question is, though, when it's available, where to see it. When you received your initial aid offer, that happened, I know, within your student portal through admissions. Moving forward, everything that we do is going to be through the what's called Duke Hub. And so if you don't have the Duke Hub app on your phone, or if you're not used to going there on your computer, it's going to be really important to get familiar with it, because so much of the information that we have at Duke is actually housed within Duke Hub. To see our information, you go to this area, which is financials, and then you'll actually see financial aid as the area that you can select from there. It's really important when we issue the aid offers, you want to get all of the money that we're offering you credited to your bill once the bill is issued, and you need to go on there and actually accept certain types of aid to make sure that they show up against your bill. So let's talk about the parts of your aid award that you'll see once you actually have access to that. There are 4 common types. There's work study. You all saw that as an offer, and we'll talk a little bit more about what each of these mean as we go. Loans and grant aid, which is what we like to talk about most, and also outside scholarships. Some of you are coming with scholarships from other places, and so we'll talk about how that interacts with your financial aid from Duke as well. Let's talk about work study. Work study is a job. It's an opportunity to work on campus, or in some cases remotely for a campus job. And there are some remote positions available. And unlike other forms of aid, you have to apply for it and actually be hired by the individual department. Work study jobs are posted online. And so you'll have the opportunity to apply and receive feedback, you'll interview, you'll send resumes. And so it's a good learning experience as well for procuring on-campus employment, everything from research labs to other types of employment on the campus. You're paid based on the hours you work. There are a number of different pay rates, and so it depends on the department as to how much you might get paid per hour. So one of the things we do is encourage you, if you're interested in working a campus job, apply broadly. Apply to as many jobs as you can or you're interested in, because you'll find they may have different hours, rates of pay, and certainly types of work. Each 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, you're paid via direct deposit generally, and so you'll have to set that up. But you're paid based on the hours you worked. You've been allotted $2,200 in your financial aid offer, but to earn it and how long it takes to earn it will depend. The amount that we gave you usually is about the equivalent at the average rate of pay, usually working between 8 to 10 hours a week during the semester. We have videos, and I'll be plugging these throughout. You received in your invitation to this session, you received links to the videos, so you may have watched those. If you haven't, check them out. We have a YouTube channel, and more videos go up all the time telling you how to use your aid, and they're really helpful, so we just want to highlight that those are out there. The second type of aid is loans. Obviously, loans include money that you have to pay back. So you work to earn work-study funds, and you have to pay back loans, but these go directly against your bill. And in that regard, students can be offered up to $5,000 in their aid award. Depending on your income level, you may have been offered a little less than that, but the most we'll ever offer you to try to help meet your financial need is $5,000. Most of those loans come from the federal government, but there are other lenders. And this is an important part. Earlier I mentioned part of the reason we are remaking your financial aid awards includes the fact that we're trying to give you better loans. Some of you are not offered, you're offered something called the Duke Educational Assistance Loan. And for a long time, that loan was a really good one, and we were offering it in place of loans from the federal government that weren't as competitive and might have had higher interest rates. But in the wake of COVID and this year, the federal government lowered interest rates significantly. And so we want to make sure that you get the best loan possible. And so that's part of what we're changing right now in your financial aid awards, is we're going to offer you those federal loans instead, because over the life of the loan, it's going to save you money. So that's why we're making the change. Just so you know, here's my plug again, more videos. You can learn more about loans. We provide a lot of details about what's out there. What do you do if you need loans more than $5,000? What are your options and who do you contact? All of that information is contained on our website and in our videos. I love to talk about grant aid, obviously, because this is money you don't have to pay back. This is free money. This is offered based on your financial need, but it comes in a few different kinds, and I want you to understand what you'll see happening on your financial aid offer. Usually it says something like Duke Grant, and I think that's probably what you saw in your initial aid offer. But we are a school that is funded in part by endowments, and so we have donors who provide specifically financial aid funds. And so once we find out sort of who you match with, you'll see, instead of it just being a generic title, you'll actually see the name of that donor or the name of that endowment that's funding you here at Duke. And there's a possibility you might even be asked to send a thank you note at that point in time, since they've given to Duke specifically to make sure that you're able to attend. The other kinds of grants that you'll see usually come from the government. Pell Grant is a very common one, but there are also some for those of you in the state of North Carolina. You'll see those as well. Outside scholarships, that's a big question that we get a lot. How do I get an outside scholarship is one. And as well as, what do I do if I'm coming with one already, and how will that affect my aid? I'll talk about both of those things. Outside scholarships can come from a variety of sources: clubs, community organizations, things like that. You can even go through national searches. Some of you may have done that in the past. We do keep a spreadsheet on our website that lists anyone who's told us that they're interested in Duke students applying for their scholarship. You can find that on our website as well, and we're happy to provide you with that link. Most of those deadlines, I think, for this coming school year have closed, but you can apply at any time. So keep an eye on it, even if right now you might be applying for scholarships that could apply for next year. We do keep that list updated and would encourage you to use it. If you get a scholarship or you already have one, we need to know about it because it does impact your financial aid. You can report that through Duke Hub to us. There's a link that says I have an outside scholarship. You can also just email us. If you email us, this is the information that we need to know. This PowerPoint will make available online as well. So if you're taking notes, you don't have to write all of this down. But I did want to make sure you were aware that there are some key pieces that we'll need to know in advance. If you're receiving your scholarship and they've sent the check to you and you need to get it to us, here's the address where you would need to send it. In terms of the way that outside scholarships work with your awards, let's pretend this is a financial aid award. We've used nice round numbers for the purposes of examples. And then we find out that you received a $5,000 scholarship from the Rotary Club. If that happens, what we would typically do is we want to reduce your obligations to work or to borrow to meet your need. And so we can replace and would replace either your federal loan or your work study with that outside scholarship. Typically, we have replaced loans first because we want to reduce your indebtedness, but we don't have to. And so in cases where you would prefer to keep those loans and you would like it to replace work study, we can do that. You just have to let us know. If you receive more than what we've offered you in loan and work study in your initial aid offer, it's at that point that it would begin reducing Duke grant. Those are the types of aid. There are a few really important things about aid that I want to make sure that you know. And one is that you may need someone else to access your financial aid information, your bills, how much you're receiving in aid. And if you need to do that, there's a way that you can activate that right through Duke Hub. And in fact, only you can activate it through Duke Hub. So if you have someone in your life who really wants to see your information or needs it in order to pay the bill, there are steps that you need to take to give them that permission. And you'll want to do that sooner rather than later so that when the bills are issued, they can act on it right away. Here's something important. A lot of students are afraid that, oh, if I give my parent access to see my bill, are they going to be able to see other information about me when they access my account? And the answer is no. It's customizable. So you can give a parent access to see your financial information without giving them access to see your grades. And you just set that all up on Duke Hub. The other thing that I want to highlight in its importance through Duke Hub is setting up direct deposit with the bursar. So if your financial aid is greater than your charges, at that point in time, we owe you money. And the only way we have to get that to you efficiently is through direct deposit. And so you'll need a few things for direct deposit, and one is the bank account. So if you haven't set up a bank account before, now would be a good time to do that if you're expecting money from financial aid or from your work study job. They'll need a place to be able to put those funds. And there are two different processes. WorkStudy has a different process for direct deposit than we do. And today I'm just going to talk about our process. But I just want you to be aware of that. Having the bank account is the first step. If you don't set up direct deposit, then what will happen is that we send a paper check in the mail to whatever the permanent address is on file. So if you needed that money right away, it will be delayed because it's going to go to your permanent address instead of the address where you may be living at the time, unless you sign up for direct deposit. To do this, you go to Duke Hub. I know we keep plugging it, and we've got this very nice image here of your phone. You can do it right from the app. You can also do it online. You go to the Forms and Requests tab in there and say Manage Direct Deposit. We get a question commonly, which is, we're this far in the year, can I still apply for financial aid? And the answer is a resounding yes. If you have not done so yet, you have to fill out two applications. It's the FAFSA and the College Board profile. So those two items are key. And then you may be asked to give us tax information depending, or additional information depending on what we see on those applications. And if we need additional information, if you sign into Duke Hub, I know I keep saying how important Duke Hub is. If you sign in there, one of the first things that you'll see are there items that you need to take care of, and it's called your to-do list. You'll see the documents that we need showing up in your to-do list when you sign into Duke Hub if we need anything else. Um, I'm gonna get ready to turn us over to questions. And one thing before I do that, I just want to highlight, we're gonna have time today to try to do some Q&A. I told you I'd leave significant time for that, and I was serious about it. But you're going to have questions beyond what we answer in this presentation, and we may not be able to get to all of them. And more than anything, I think it's important for you to know how to get in touch with us. Email is absolutely the best way. And your financial aid counselor is listed in Duke Hub. So when you go to the financial aid section of that, you can find out who your specific financial aid counselor is and click, and it'll email that person directly. Or you can email our general FinAid at duke.edu as well. You can call our phone number. Right now, because we are not physically on campus, you'll have to leave a message, and then we'll return your call if you prefer to do that. Online, you can also see lots of different ways that you can contact us and reach us. You can learn about your financial aid counselor if you're interested. All of our bios are out there. But I want you to know we are as available as ever, even though we're not in an office in person. I'm going to stop my screen share at this point. And one of the things that I want to make sure that you know is I understand as well that the context of this particular presentation has been the types of aid that you're going to see. And you'll notice each day we're covering a different series of topics. But some things may be more pressing on your mind than others. And so please know that it doesn't have to be related to the types of aid in terms of the questions that you asked today. We're here each day to answer the questions as they come in. But for some of them, we may answer them, but then also refer you to the specific presentation and videos that we'll be doing on that day so that you have the opportunity to get as much information as possible, since I know our time is somewhat limited today. So at that point, if we can go ahead and enable the chat, I'm happy to answer what comes in. And Michael in our office, he's an associate director in our office, and he's here to moderate. He'll let me know what your questions are, and then we'll answer them as we go.
All right, thanks, Miranda. Yes, chat is now open, so please let us know what questions that you have. All right, and they're starting to stream in here.
Great.
All right, first question is, what qualifies as a special circumstance when filling out the special circumstances form?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked, and I'm going to do a shameless plug for Wednesday's presentation, which is specifically about special circumstances. On our website, I do list information about what does and doesn't qualify for a special circumstance. And largely, what we're looking for are things that would affect your family's income outside of what we received on your aid application. At the top of everyone's mind tend to be things like the changes that have been brought about by COVID. We know lots of families out there have lost, they've lost jobs, they've had reduced incomes, some people have been furloughed, and we understand that impact. We're going to be opening actually a specific application for COVID appeals. So if your family had a change and it is because of COVID, you're going to have a separate application that we're going to ask you to complete. There was one available earlier in the year for you all, for the incoming class, to let us know, because we knew you were making decisions, but a lot can change since you had that opportunity back in March and April to tell us that information. And so there's a new app, and it's open to all students that we'll be launching later this week. And so obviously, that's one area where we understand that you might have a special circumstance. There could be others. Those might include things like medical expenses. They could include death of a family member. Clearly that would change your circumstances, but everything that we're looking at have to be tied to things specifically to changes in your family's income to be considered for circumstances, but that might be impacts to that. So maybe you forgot to tell us on your application that you are taking care of a grandparent, for instance, and your parents are paying for that. We understand that we're in a sandwich generation in many cases. If you forgot to give us information like that, you can complete the special circumstances form. And in fact, it's helpful because on our website, we list the types of circumstances that qualify, and the form does as well. And there might be something that's not on there and you still think should be reviewed, and you're welcome to complete the application and let us know about that information. But take a look first at the types of things that we can't cover because we talk about what was already considered in your aid award when you applied, and we take a lot of factors into account. I won't name them all now, but before you go to complete that application, take a look at that page.
Very helpful. Thank you very much, Miranda.
Sure.
All right, next question here is about bills. Students are wondering, when will they receive a bill from Duke and what will be their time frame to pay?
That's a great question. And so I'm going to answer as best I can, not being from the bursar's office, which is the official billing office for Duke. So I always say I really like my role because our office's job is to give money away. And I always thought that was the better place to be than the office that has to collect the money from you. And so for me, the best I can give you is the guidance that the bursar is publishing right now, which is they're anticipating trying to get bills out as quickly as they can. That is my dog. I apologize. Welcome to Zoom. But we're going to get bills out as quickly as we can as a university, but we're expecting that probably, I believe the language that they're using right now is sometime in mid-August, understanding that you would not be expected to pay by the first day of class. You can't. That turnaround time just can't be that fast. And so the due date would be sometime in September. And I'm sorry I can't give you the specific day that they will be released, but I'm sure the bursar will be sharing that information shortly.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Miranda.
Mhm.
All right, now we're getting some work study questions here. Students are wondering, is it going to be possible to do work study with COVID?
Mhm.
How's it going to work with remote learning? Can you touch on
Yeah.
that?
Absolutely. I will tell you what I know. And work study's always been interesting in that it's facilitated by individual departments. There's a place called Duke List where we put up a lot of the jobs that are available. And so you can go there and see which departments are hiring and actually apply to jobs online there. Some of those jobs may be available for remote work. Others will require in-person work, and they should specify when they make the job postings which is which. There are some restrictions on work study in terms of if you're remote, what the work can be, and where you would need to be able to actually complete the work. And we'll post more information about that because obviously with the volume of students we're anticipating who may be trying to find jobs remotely, we want to make sure that we provide as many opportunities as possible and options as possible for that work. And so that information is ongoing. But the first step that you'd want to do is look at Duke List to see what's available. And then those individual departments will let you know whether or not the jobs are in person or remote.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question here. If you choose to attend Duke virtually, what will happen to room and board fees?
That's a great question. And we actually just posted more information about this on Keep Learning. So if you're not familiar with the keeplearning.duke.edu website, it's something that we would love for you to familiarize yourself with because obviously with all of the changes, I'm sure you all saw the president's announcement yesterday about the changes to on-campus housing. We are responding as quickly as we can, and all updates go on the Keep Learning FAQ site. So we'll point you in those directions. I think, Michael, the question that you asked was specifically related to the bills. How would you be billed? If you're not living on campus, we certainly would not send you a bill for doing so. So if you're off campus, you are not billed in any way for room or board. I think maybe the deeper question there is how does financial aid respond? Can you get financial aid even if you're not living on campus and you're attending remotely? And the answer to the question is yes, you can. You'll have the opportunity. We'll be sending a survey later in the week. I know a lot of people are still figuring out where they will physically be to attend. And so we're giving folks a couple of days to process the message from the president and start thinking about those items. And then we're going to launch a survey where you can tell us where you're going to be because we want to make sure you get the right amount of money. And if you are living off campus, and you're paying rent, we want to know about that. So you'll have an opportunity to complete the survey. And we'll ask that you upload a copy of your lease agreement. And then that way we can figure out how to fund you appropriately. The second piece would be what happens if I'm living at home, but I'm not I'm off campus, but I'm not paying rent. Um, for students who are living at home, we still understand that your family incurs expenses because you're there. They're paying utilities because you're in the home. We also understand that you have food expenses. And so we still consider a budget. It is a lower one since you're not paying rent, but we take it into consideration in either case. And so the goal is to make sure that you are supported, and the changing and where you're learning hasn't changed that commitment.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
All right, next question. Is there a deadline for accepting awards? And if so, when would accepting become available?
There is no deadline, so you can accept awards throughout the course of the academic year as long as you're attending, all the way to approaching the last day of class in April. We certainly would not want you to wait that long to accept your aid. We want you to accept your aid as soon as you can if you know that you need it, particularly related to loans. We automatically accept grant aid for you. We assume you want the free money. It's really the loans and the work study that we're not sure about, and so we let you go in and accept those portions. Once your aid goes live and you're able to see it, which, like I said, we're anticipating working on those this week. So by next week, this is something you'll be able to see. You'll also be given access to begin accepting those awards. It's really important with regard to loans specifically that you know that just by clicking accept doesn't mean you're going to get the money. The federal government is going to make you go online. You'll see a financial aid, as soon as you accept it, you'll see a little to do pop up the next day that says you need to take some extra steps to get the funding. It'll be on Duke Hub. And you're going to go out and they make you complete a little counseling session that tells you about the loan to prove that you understand the terms. And then there's an electronic signature called a promissory note that you'll have to sign, showing that you accept the terms of the loans that you just learned about. Once you do those two steps, the loans can credit your account.
Thank you. Follow-up question. If you don't accept the loans, will they still be offered the following year, and will your financial aid package change?
You are asking excellent questions. And so, yes, every year is a new year as far as financial aid is concerned. And so just because you don't take advantage of a loan in one year doesn't mean we can't offer it to you in the next. You can't double up. So if you turn down $5,000 this year, doesn't mean you can borrow all of a sudden $10,000 next year. The federal government considers it a new day every year as well. So the loans that you're offered, they're on the table for the time that you are here during the academic year. Then the academic year closes and we begin a new year, and you'll have a new offer for similar level of loan funding. And there was a second part to your question, Michael. Can you repeat that for me?
Sure, yeah. It's just they're wondering if they don't accept the loans, will the financial aid package change?
It will not. It will not. If you don't accept your loans, they will remain out there for you to accept for as long as the academic year is running. Um, a question we sometimes get, and I'll put this as a follow-up, is maybe you don't want the full 5,000. That comes up occasionally. And if that's the case, and you say, well, I don't need quite that much. Do I have the option, instead of just clicking one giant accept, to accept a lower amount so that I'm more conservative on my borrowing? All you need to do is email your financial aid counselor and let them know that. They'll accept the portion that you want, and then the rest of it will remain out there. And then if you hit a situation down the road and you need the remainder of the funding, you can ask. The other important part to remember about loans is if you need more than the 5,000 that's been offered, and you realize, wow, I've got a real shortfall, or this event has happened and I'd like to borrow more, you can reach out to your financial aid counselor to find out if you have any additional eligibility.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a question here regarding how do we access money for financial aid money to cover flights, laundry, books, etc. Could you touch on that?
Sure. So the way your financial aid works is it's first applied to your bill. So everything that we're offering in terms of financial aid, the bill will come and it will have on it everything as appropriate. So we'll have certainly tuition and fees. And then if you're living on campus, you would see housing and a dining plan charge. At that point, if your financial aid is bigger than those charges, that's when I was talking about you really need to sign up for direct deposit, because then it's given to you in a refund. Then you've got money to use to purchase those items. But if your financial aid, let's say your family contribution is such that your financial aid isn't bigger than your bill, then your family contribution is what you would need to use to buy those incidentals.
Thank you. All right. Question here. They have financial aid listed on their admissions letter, but it's not in the financial aid section for Duke Hub anymore. Do you know why this is? Could you
Yes.
remind
Yeah.
people about that?
Yeah, sure. And I know we've had a lot of folks who joined us a little after too, and so I want to make sure that everybody is aware of what's taking place there. I promise we are not taking away your money. We are trying to make sure that we get you an accurate level of funding, and so you're gonna see some changes, and we are reissuing your awards to reflect those changes. And so you've lost access just this week. We'll begin to make those adjustments. And I mentioned a little earlier the reason we've done that. A number of students were offered something called the Duke Educational Assistance Loan, and since we made that offer, the federal government lowered interest rates on federal loans to make them better than the loan that was coming from us. And we always want you to have the best loan possible. And so for those students, we're reoffering so that you get the better loan that's going to cost you less over time. So we want to make sure we make that change. And the other thing that we're doing, at the time we issued those awards, we assumed everyone would be on campus. We started putting these together before there was any sort of mention of COVID. We started preparing for you very early. And so we didn't know that the fall semester was going to be impacted. And we know some people will be living off campus and living at home. Those of you who are living at home will have a reduced financial aid offer to reflect your lower living costs. We'll still factor some in for the increased cost to your family for utilities and meals for you, but you will see your financial aid change. I mentioned that we are launching a survey in the next few days so you can tell us where you are. That helps us get the information about the right level of funding to get to you. If you are not going to be on campus and you're paying rent somewhere, you can upload a lease agreement to us. And at that point, once we receive a lease agreement and can confirm that information, we'll be able to increase your financial aid award to reflect that. So you'll see those changes when the awards are released next week.
Thank you, Miranda. All right, next question here is regarding submitting documentation. Just wondering, will our parents have to submit the W-2 form every year for financial aid?
That's a great question. And so this goes into like, what's the nature of financial aid? What will you need to do each year? What does your 4-year trajectory look like here? Every year is a new year for us. And so just like you file taxes every year, you'll file financial aid every year. And so, yes, you'll file the FAFSA application for the federal government. That they require that's an annual filing, and the College Board profile. You'll do those two things. Not all students are asked to submit tax information. Some of you were able to use something called the data retrieval tool. So if you completed your own FAFSA, you were able to import some tax data. Sometimes that's all we need is you just import it from the FAFSA. We can see that you did that. That's enough for us to put together your aid award. Some people's finances are a bit more complex, or you weren't able to use that particular tool on the FAFSA, and then we'll have to ask you for your tax information if that was the case. And then every year your financial aid will be adjusted based on income. So if your income goes down significantly, we want to know that. And so you have opportunities for increased financial aid if your circumstances aren't as good as they were when you committed to Duke. The reverse is also true. So if you win the lottery, you would expect that your financial aid would go down in accordance, but it responds annually in that way.
Thank you very much. Okay, so for freshmen who didn't apply for financial aid, can we still apply for work study this year?
Yes, you can. So there are never any deadlines for us while an academic year is open for you to file a FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid through the federal government, which is what helps us determine whether or not you can get work study. So if all you're interested in is work study, obviously you want time to work, so you'd want to file that sooner rather than later. But you can complete that application only. And when we get it, if all you're interested in is work study, that's all we need to find out whether or not we can offer that to you. By completing it, everyone will be offered something. It doesn't mean that we can automatically guarantee you a job. You have to apply for that. And like I mentioned, there are interview processes and things like that for them as well. But you can certainly begin applying for those jobs after you complete the FAFSA application. And there's no deadline for that as long as the academic year is open.
Thank you for that, Miranda. All right, next question here. Is the family contribution a charge on the bill, or is it an estimate of what we need to purchase things like books, supplies, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. What is this family contribution? Where did we get it? Um, the family contribution is an estimate of affordability. It's what can your family afford? And then Duke puts together financial aid to try to meet the difference. And so when you're thinking about your family contribution, though that's the amount that your family would need to be prepared to pay based on your income towards college. It'll all make a little bit more sense. I realize for the first time, you're a class coming in without a bill, and we just kind of took your financial aid down a minute ago so that we could revise it, hopefully make it better, and then put it back online. But if you're wondering what will my bill look like, that information is pretty straightforward. So that if you know that tuition and fees is published on the Bursar's website, you can look at that amount, add to it the amount for housing and meals if you're living on campus, and you'll know what that bill is. And then you'll see your aid award that we offered you earlier, which will hold true. We're switching out some other items. But you'll be able to bump that up to get a sense of what your bill will look like. Remember, work study doesn't go towards your bill. That's money that you earn. So don't include that when you're trying to figure out what you might owe. For those living off campus, I mentioned there will be some adjustments to reflect if you're living at home. And so that's another reason why it's so important for us to work on these awards, and we will have them to you by next week so you can begin making those calculations for yourself as well. That's how you'll know exactly what you need to contribute to your bill, but we understand that there are expenses like books and transportation and things like that. Generally speaking, that's also where your family contribution comes into play.
Makes sense. Thank you, Miranda.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're getting a couple questions about health insurance. Some
Great.
just want to know how it works. Some are
Yeah.
concerned because freshmen might be here only in the fall and not spring.
Mm-hmm.
So just generally, how is health insurance going to be handled this year?
I will give you what I know as of right now. Again, we weren't anticipating COVID putting us in this situation, and the volume of students who may not be able to be here for the full academic year. With regard to health insurance, the good news about the Duke Student Health Insurance Plan is that it's a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, which is generally applicable across the United States. It's a very broad network of providers. And we are required as an institution for all students to be covered by health insurance. And so, if you do not have health insurance already through a parent, or if the health insurance that you have right now isn't applicable in North Carolina and you're going to be living in North Carolina, you'll be required to utilize the Duke Student Health Insurance Plan. The good news for that is there's a process. You'll go online, you'll indicate whether or not you have existing health insurance. They'll let you know whether or not that health insurance will work in the state of North Carolina. If it doesn't, they'll reject your application and say, you've got to sign up for our health insurance plan. And that health insurance plan should apply even if you're not here in the spring, due to how broad the network of providers is. The Duke Student Health office will be able to provide more information about that. If you have questions about specific coverage, they can give you information about what it will cover. But I think the bigger question students are having, if I have my own health insurance and I don't want to buy yours, for those students, when you complete the application, they'll waive the charge for you. You can keep the insurance you have. It will work here or wherever you might live. And for students who have to purchase our plan and are receiving need-based grant aid from us, we cover the charge. And so we get a list from Duke Student Health once that information is fed through the system. And so if you've been required to purchase ours and you're receiving grant aid from us, we'll increase your aid to cover the charge.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can you touch on if there are any merit scholarships that are eligible for first-year Duke students to apply for at this point in time?
Sure. And there actually are not merit scholarships for you to apply to at this time. I think all of the merit scholarships for students were issued back in the spring. And so there aren't opportunities to apply for that again. Everything our office is going to do is going to be based on financial need. It's going to be based on your income. There's one exception to that merit scholarship program, and it's very limited. It's the Robertson Scholars Leadership Program. There's information about that online if you go to the website, and you can find links to that. if you're interested in applying for it, but it is quite limited. And so I don't want to promise broadly, because that really is our only exception to someone who's already a first-year student who might place into that for their sophomore year. But generally speaking, everything that we're talking about is need-based.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
All right. So we're getting questions about if we apply for financial aid now for this year, how long will it take to get something back? Should we wait until we receive the aid offer until we pay the tuition?
If you're just applying now, we would not likely have your financial aid prepared before the bill. If they're targeting sometime in mid-August to release the bills, because we're now working on packaging and preparing information for students based on what was released yesterday. We're going to be doing that probably right up until those billing deadlines. So you'll receive a bill most likely before the aid has been applied. However, we would hopefully, if you were to apply now, don't wait until you receive the bill, but if you go ahead and apply now and we've got all the information we need, we would give you a financial aid offer as soon as we could once we receive it. It typically takes us somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple of weeks to review it. So that's why I would encourage you to start now. But if you were to submit that to us, we would release it to you so you could see the level of aid that you were receiving, even though it wouldn't be, bills are done monthly. They're posted in Duke Hub. So you wouldn't see it as a credit against your bill yet, but you would have a sense of what you needed to pay. And so at that point, you would be responsible for the difference by the billing date.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Miranda.
Mhm.
One question here, is work study mandatory?
That's a good question. And the answer is no, work study is not mandatory. It's up to you whether or not you want to take advantage of that. And I think it's really important to highlight what is work study, why are we offering it to you? And I'll provide a little bit of background on that. When we think about financial aid, and let's think more broadly. When we think about what it takes to attend Duke, you'll see posted on our website and every college's website something called the cost of attendance. And it'll say things like, of course, tuition, fees, housing, meals, all the things that we're charging you. But you'll see it lists some other information as well. And some of the things it lists are things like miscellaneous spending money is part of a school's cost of attendance. We list almost $2,000 more than that when you look at some of the supply costs as well that we factor in for students. And so when we say you can work to earn money, one of the things financial aid really has not been designed to do is set up grant assistance to pay for spending money. But we know that you have expenses. And so work study is really an avenue for you to pursue to try to help pay some of those costs. But you'll notice it's not going towards your bill. We're paying it to you in a paycheck. And so it's really there to help supplement your costs throughout the semester. But you might find other ways to do that. You may find jobs outside of Duke that are going to help supplement that and maybe more effectively at an hourly rate than the campus job you may have been offered initially. And it doesn't hurt our feelings if you take that job or you fund those expenses in other ways. You're not obligated to fulfill that.
Thank you very much, Miranda. All right, looks like we're coming towards an end of the questions here. I have one more that I think we haven't covered.
All right.
And it's kind of outside the financial aid realm, but we'll still give it a go. Do you believe there will be any refunds if the campus is forced to shut down and students are sent home?
That is a great question and highly speculative. And so one of the things that I am not speculating on at this point is any university shutdowns or impacts in those ways. I think we're very committed to learning regardless. And what we saw back in the spring was the world was shut down and Duke carried on. We still carried on classes. We still carried on and finished the semester. Our students still graduated. And so I don't think there's any concern that we'd be in a scenario where there would be a shutdown of that magnitude.
Thank you, Miranda. Looks like we got a couple more questions flooding.
Great.
For QuestBridge students specifically, is
Okay.
the family contribution what we actually have to pay? Or is it just an estimate of costs that we may need for supplies, etc.?
Sure. The family contribution. Um, yeah, I think a little bit earlier I mentioned it's an estimate of affordability. Really, it doesn't always mean, oh, this is the bottom line that you'll pay. The best way to get that is once we get these financial aid offers to you, you can take what you know you're going to be billed. For instance, if you're on campus, the housing, the meals, the tuition, and the fees, those are all billed to you. And then your financial aid goes against that. Anything left over goes to you in what we call a refund. And if your family contribution is high enough and it means that there's a little left, the amount that you pay to us is just the difference between that aid and your bill. But your family contribution is broader than that because there are all those other expenses that we know you may need to be contributing towards that we're not including just against the bill. The family contribution takes those into account.
Thank you, Miranda.
Mhm.
All right, one more question here. If we do work study and make more than the allotted amount,
Yeah.
how will that money be handled?
So that's up to the department, and so good for you if you found a job and you like it so much and you put in the time. And in many cases, individual departments will keep a student on. You'll have to talk with them about it because it's important to know what work study is. It means that financial aid's paying the majority of your wage for that job, which gives you a competitive advantage against students who aren't on work study because for that department to hire them, they'd have to pay their full wage. If you're coming in with work study, then you probably have a little bit of an edge against that other candidate because they're able to hire you for more hours than they otherwise would. But when they run out of that funding from us and you've earned your full allocation, they have to decide whether or not it's in their departmental budget to keep you on beyond that amount.
Thank you very much, Miranda. All right, and that comes to the end of our questions on chat.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you will be doing this all week, and keep the questions coming. If you have them, you saw the contact information for how to get in touch with us. But please attend because we have a lot of information that we want to share with you, and we know that you probably are going to think of questions that didn't come up in today's chat. And we look forward to talking with you more tomorrow. Thanks.